Jai Shri Mataji, Maureen, Felicity, and Jamel from France, Jamel and Maureen from up north in England, and Felicity in Gloucestershire this time. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us this evening to talk about your times with Shri Mataji herself. And we'll start today's interview with a talk of Shri Mataji that she gave when Shri Mataji visited your house, Jamel, in 1977. The audio quality isn't very good, so please bear with it. The translations are there for those who are watching. So thanks for joining us again. Jamel, would you like to tell us something about this talk after we hear when we have had a bit of time with?
Yeah, actually, you'll be surprised. Just about 10 days ago, I published an article on medium.com. I don't know if you know this website, medium.com. It's a website where many people actually write articles, and even Obama, I think, writes in that website. And the article, the title of the article was "The Genesis of Sahaja Yoga Recordings." And so I explained in the article everything about how we started, how actually we started recording talks of Shri, how there were quite a few talks that were not actually recorded. And but Douglas did what he could at the time with whatever equipment he had. And I was not even aware that he recorded this talk. I only found out about 2 years ago when someone wrote to me saying, you know, there's a talk that was recorded in your house in St. Albans in 1977. I said, really? I couldn't believe it. And in fact, he did, you know. And Maureen was there, of course. Maureen, Pat, Douglas, of course, he was recording. And Gavin and Jane were there as well. And Kevin also was there, Pat's son. And I remember that he was using a reel-to-reel machine,
Yeah.
you know, recording machine. It was a very old thing. And interestingly enough, there was another person in India called Mr. Pai, who is Abdul's father, who also did a lot of recording using a reel-to-reel machine. And he actually gave all his recordings to Douglas, who, you know, transcribed. I mean, he managed to record them on proper cassettes and so on, which, you know, because everybody was only using cassettes and we could only distribute through cassettes. And it's just interesting to see how, you know, you have to think that Sahaja Yoga actually had progressed from nothing to what we have today. And when we talk about the genesis, I mean, I think there's an anecdote, was it Pat once who said, Shri said, can you record me? And he said, well, there's no need, we're all here, you know.
We're all here, it's Pat, yes.
So in fact, and the actual task of recording itself was not something, you know, which was of paramount. It was not a priority, you know, and it became a priority with time, you know. And then we realized that, you know, these are historical moments, and if we don't record them, it's just going to be lost. Yeah. And so just to say quickly about this talk, I know what happened was I'd been in Sahaja just 2-3 months maybe, and Shri came to St. Albans to this, where I used to live with other students. And fortunately that weekend, I think they all left, or there's only one colleague of mine who was around. And we decided to have a seminar in the house. It was a beautiful house. There was an extremely beautiful garden, and with, you know, it had roses, it had everything, you know. And I remember Shri come in and saying, I said, you know, where would you like to sleep? And then she looked at the rooms, and there were some really big rooms on the first floor. She said, no, I sleep in this room. And she chose the smallest room, which is the one I was, you know, which was my room, in fact, you know. And I knew why she did that, of course. And she felt, you know, if I had to vibrate something, it had to be in the room of the Sahaja Yogi, you know. And then Shri stayed, I think the weekend. She came on Saturday and left on Sunday, yeah. And if you remember, we went to the Greek restaurant in St. Albans.
Yeah.
We visited St. Albans. Shri knelt at the tomb of St. Albans. She said he was the Adi Guru. He was beheaded for his beliefs by the Romans. And
So
we
St.
had,
Albans, so there's a tomb of this saint in St. Albans in this church or cathedral
yeah, that's right.
that Shri Mataji said he was an Adi Guru
Yes,
in Roman times.
Is
exactly.
that a saint or a bishop?
Who? He was a Roman soldier, St. Albans.
St. Alban was a Roman soldier.
Roman soldier, and he was beheaded because of his Christian beliefs. Yeah.
Oh.
But she said he was an Adi Guru, and she knelt at. It was quite amazing to see that. I think we were all there, and the cathedral was very close to where I was living in those days. So I think it was all. And actually, I explained in that article, in one of the articles that I wrote, that when we used to we used to live what we call in digs, but in those days we used to share a house with other students. And I think humanity somehow, or maybe the unconscious, chooses the right place for humanity to come, and that place was just the right place. It was a perfect house, a family house. It was very clean, and it was very close to the cathedral, so we could just walk to the cathedral, and then we walked to a restaurant where we had all together a meal in a Greek restaurant, and Shri invited all of us then. But I thought it was amazing that Shri would come all the way to St. Albans, and stay with us and have a seminar. And I remember it was a Krishna Puja that we had on that during that seminar weekend. And we had the lounge was downstairs, and we had the puja there. There was enough space. And Maureen, do you remember?
Not so detailed as you.
Because I lived there, so I would know more details.
Yeah.
Simply because
How many of you were there at that seminar? Like,
How many?
yes,
About 7.
7 of you.
Yeah,
I mean, because I think Gavin and Jane and Tony,
yeah,
that's 3. Jamal and I and Pat, that's 6.
and Douglas.
And Douglas, so that's 7. There might have been someone else. I'm trying to remember, but I don't think so.
I'm not sure. Did Christine come? Christine and Gus? I'm not sure they came. Maybe not.
Maybe not. No, I think Gus might have gone by then, 77.
No, he wasn't gone yet.
He wasn't gone yet.
Because this was in July.
Yeah,
This was
July
probably end of
77.
July or early August or something like that. Very early August.
So it's when he'd come back, but he hadn't gone again.
He had gone. He left around the end of September or something like that.
And so Shri Mataji came on the train. She came on the train.
Exactly. She came by train with. I don't know if she came. What about Gavin? Didn't she come with Gavin?
He might have come. She might have come in Gavin's car.
Yeah, that's right.
Gavin and Jane's car, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Although we had quite a few train journeys and tube journeys with Mother. So.
Amazing.
I remember something where Gavin was he came to us and gave us the name of a lady whom a student he met. They met on the train, and she was interested in Sahaja Yoga. So I think they might have come. They might have come back.
Come on the train.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Weird, isn't it?
I was just mentioning that because it's such a unique thing in those early days that Shri Mataji would travel by train. She would go to the restaurants. I mean, she was really putting herself out there to spread vibrations anywhere that she could, because there were so few yogis and the vibrations were very restricted. They were not flowing like they are today.
No, it's true that in those days we didn't have what we have today, which is cars and all that. That was not at all the case, In fact, Shri Mataji traveled in the tube. I remember once we were sitting in Oxford Street. You remember that, Maureen? We were in Oxford Street and we were waiting
Yeah,
for...
we went shopping in Oxford Street with
Mother, there was a bus. We were waiting for a particular bus. And there were about, I don't know how many, 20 or 30 buses, number 73 that went past. And we were looking for 74 or so.
Yeah.
At the end, Shrimati, you see, we're just enjoying ourselves. We're waiting, but we're not bothered in any
Yeah.
way.
Because also, because
Very,
as you said, we were all very young, even when I came later. We were all sort of in our 20s, early 20s, and you were a student. So nobody really had money or cars except Gavin and Jane, who were older.
Mm.
And
yeah,
so
they
it was a
were
very different
householders, yeah.
situation. It was a very different situation then.
So just to close the subject on St. Albans, so in fact, that was, you could say, to me, it was impressive because it was the first time that Shrimati comes in a house which I shared with other students. And then she would do the same thing, of course, in 1979 when you came, Felicity. And so that talk, Shrimati, yes, talked, it was a puja that we had done. It was probably my second puja because the first one was was the Guru Puja on the 1st of July, 77.
Kevin's house, yeah.
Probably the very first Guru Puja. Was it the first puja? I always thought
It was, other than the pujas that we
First
had at
Guru
her
Puja.
screen,
Yeah,
but that was the first puja without Satpal. It was with Mother
that's
telling us
right.
what to
Yeah,
do.
without exactly. Yes.
And
Mm.
it's the one where Mother is sat on the brown sofa with the flowers between her
That's
legs.
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So you'd had a few simple pujas in Mother's house in her screen with an Indian pujari there or
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
guiding.
But basically, Mother stopped him all the time and put him right because he was a bit of well, he was a priest. He was doing what he knew,
Yes, he was a
and
punch to
Mother
what,
would say, vibrationally, no,
yeah.
Yes.
I think
But
Yes,
she and that's when she laughed and she said, "I'm doing puja to myself," because she was having to tell us what to do and how to do it, and that very puja set with the little jewels hanging around it and the little Shri Sainath silver statue,
yeah.
I came across in the castle some years back during Navratri. It's at the castle, that whole set
wow.
in
Really?
Kabela.
Oh,
Yeah.
I lost. I mean, I talked about that also in my memories.
So that
When
original,
she had the Sainat next to her and
Yes,
the
yeah.
and she would actually, put water, and she
Pour
said,
the water over
the
him. Yeah.
vibrations, are they awakened and all that? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Maureen,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And her Sri Ganesha, the wooden.
Please.
Sorry.
Tell us more about this puja with Shri Mataji, where Shri Mataji herself is directing,
Yeah. Absolutely. Everything.
yogis
Because we
there.
we had no idea. Absolutely no idea. We didn't have saris. She gave me a silk sort of scarf, and that's wound round me, and that's where those pictures. You've seen the pictures of us all at her screen. And
Yes.
Jamal's in that as well.
Yes.
And we're holding, we're either, and Kevin's there with his elbow on Mother's knee, nonchalantly.
Yeah,
But
nonchalantly.
nonchalant.
well, he was only 7.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's amazing. But there were the times there where you could say that humanity in England was a householder and a mother.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Whereas in Kabbalah, it's different. She was more like
A guru.
the goddess, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the goddess.
But even so,
business.
when Mother did the pujas, she was still totally awe-inspiring. She was no longer the
Yes.
mother. She would sit, and I mean, it would just be. I can remember afterwards going out into the street after that Guru Puja with Mother, and I saw the pavements and the concrete, and I felt like it was a tiny thin layer over the whole pulsating earth that was Mother, and that how immense her power was, and how like ants we were compared. It the just walking out into the street, you sort of felt like you were going into an artificial area, having come from reality.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, I forgot that. I forgot that when you were in the pujas with Mother, it was so real for you, and she had this amazing power to transport from, because everything was so ordinary in those days. But then you'd get into this puja with Mother, and she'd just like power the vibrations, the energy, and transport you into a different state. So just like you said, when you would come outside or go out into the the world, you were like looking at it from this heightened awareness that you had, and you could see
Completely.
that this was just a kind of like a Maya thing. It was really profound. It was really profound. And I think because the vibrations outside were so like blah and heavy, you know, they weren't really vibrations, that the contrast was, it was a real
Very
contrast.
strong.
Yeah.
Can you, Maureen, can you talk about how you decided to try and advertise for that, you know, using those leaflets
In
for
the
the Body and Mind exhibition?
Yeah, well, the Body and Mind exhibition was the first time they'd ever had one
Yeah,
in
that's
the
right.
country.
79 was the first one, yeah.
And we sort of got all excited and said we can go there and we can do something. And Mother encouraged us. And we thought, because to have any kind of stand there was totally outside of our, you know, we had no money, full stop. And I think Gavin printed stuff up for us in his office, and we decided we'd go. We also took water pistols with vibrated water to vibrate the place. And
that was Pat and Kevin's
yeah,
special.
absolute. Pat and Kevin, yes, they could get away with it. Yeah, and Finn at the time had gone off, but he heard what we were doing and he said, "You lot are hopeless. You'll never get this done." I go, "I'll come and help you," because he from the outside. Sorry,
So that's Finbar, your younger brother.
Finbar. Yes, my younger brother. Yeah.
Of,
So
of musical and Vilamba fame nowadays.
absolutely,
And he was not
absolutely,
a yogi there. He was not a yogi. He didn't
not a yogi, not at all. He'd gone off. He went off for 10 years, but
He came
he,
and
you know,
went up, yeah.
he couldn't help being drawn. I mean, Pat and I used to go home most weekends, and we'd put soap and put oil on our heads and kumkum, and my poor parents, heaven knows what they thought was going on. And Finn would sort of, you know, be kind of detached from it to some degree, but he couldn't help the pull. And then when he heard us discussing it, he felt that we were so hopeless, he had to come and help us. And you know, but again, it was that pull, you know, he wanted to be involved, so how could he do it? By appearing to help, you know. So he was so young. I think he was 17 perhaps.
Okay.
So you know, I mean, I was 21 when I met Mother, so yeah, he was about 17, 16, 17. So it was very difficult. All his friends were sort of going off the rails, and he just got pulled away. But because of he saw us every weekend, you know, he had that connection. And so he did. And, you know, he did a very special thing bringing Jamal. So there you go.
Tell us the story about it and the vibrated water and water pistols. That's
yeah. Well, we were going around this place, and it was full of so-called, you know, seeking things.
Yeah.
They were all pretty sort of gross at that point, in good in a way, because, you know, they weren't full-blown gurus. They had things like, do you remember those plants? Did you go in that place, Jamal? They had these plants hooked up to machines, and they were supposed to be able to feel your presence when you went in there, and they'd react. So we all went in there and meditated, and they all calmed down. All the plants just completely calmed down, because when most people went there, the machines went crazy.
I remember, yeah, Gavin talking about that, yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, you know, for us, in a way, we were almost experimenting how Sahaja Yoga worked, you know, because we didn't know. I know the first time Mother told me about how to put your hands towards something to see what it was like. And they had a poster of the TM guy. I put my hands to it, and I felt like I'd been bitten, you know, like you know, that's how I learnt that, you know, not everything you should put your hands towards, but you know, things were so gross then. Like Felicity says, the extremes were there. You know, you'd be with Mother, and you'd be like in completely a different realm, and then we go back to our squat and our hippie friends, you know, so that you were living in two worlds, really.
That's it. You're right. That's what it felt like. You were living in two worlds. Whereas
Yeah.
now, it doesn't feel like that. Now, you can be yourself. You can be a yogi. Vibrations flow out of you. And it's just like, I mean, you still witness and you can see the rubbish that's going on, but somehow we're able to be part of it now.
Oh,
All
it's
flowing.
it's mainstream to be
Yeah,
a seeker now. It's mainstream. In fact, people are desperate. So, you know,
It's so hard to explain to people how really different it was then, and how just so basic. It was just so basic. And, literally, Shri Mataji was the only one with vibrations.
Yeah. Well, what I didn't understand was why people didn't see Mother as we did. You know, when we went to places like Oxford Street, and you go in a department store, I would just stare at these people serving her, waiting for them to go, oh my God, you know, but they didn't. They just served her. I was just like, couldn't understand how they couldn't see who she was.
I guess it was the Maya, the Maya of Mother's human presence, and that they weren't seeking. They weren't seeking because somehow, I mean, for us, we were looking, we were seeking. So I feel like the Kundalini recognized Mother then, it's.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But you know, I was just quite young. I just couldn't understand why
Yeah.
they didn't understand, you know.
Well, I couldn't understand how people would get realization. Like, you'd give your friends. I took a group of friends when I got it, and they would feel it, but then they didn't want to stick on. It just didn't touch them, I guess, in their depth.
Still happens now, doesn't it? But Djamel,
Yeah.
how did you get to know about Mataji and yoga?
I was
And
just
tell
going to explain
us
that actually, yes, because, well, first I have to thank Finbar because he's the one who volunteered to give those leaflets. And what happened was I picked up, it was just two typed A4 sheets, stapled together. So I took one of those leaflets and I put it in my pocket, and then I don't know how I didn't throw it away. I just read it on the train when I went back to St. Albans, and then when I read about the fact that there was something about Kundalini and about those, they were talking about Shimadaji who could not only give you self-realization, but you could feel your chakras, you could go into collective consciousness. It just I became so curious because I was already seeking. I was about to go and see if I can find a guru, and just when I was about to find something, I got this leaflet which explained everything. And I remember that leaflet. I put it under my bed, and I would, from time to time, I would just read the content. And then after 2 weeks, I said, okay, with a bit of courage, I called the number at the end of that leaflet. And it was Gavin, who I remember, I found out later it was Gavin who responded, and he said, okay, you can come to my place. It was close to Euston Square, and which was perfect because my train brings me to St. Pancras, and from there I could walk to his place. And when I arrived there, it was a very humble place. It's just a flat with these big, huge sash windows facing south. There's a lot of sun. And Gavin actually received me, said, just sit down. And I sat down and I could see, at some point he did some gesture and I thought, that's a bit strange. He must have been doing some bandhan or something. I thought, that looks strange. And then I saw, there was a picture of Shimadaji on the mantelpiece. You remember that, Maureen? Shimadaji's picture on the mantelpiece. And I sat on the there was a settee was on the right hand side of the door, and Shimadaji would sit on this sort of half raised bed on the left as you go into the lounge. And then Gavin said, okay, Shimadaji is going to come. Okay, so you can just sit here. And then at some point, everybody rushed to the windows, and Shimadaji arrived by taxi, I think. And then she came up. And when I saw Shimadaji, I thought, she's not a human being. I was so awed by her presence. I even bowed like everybody in front of her, which I would never normally do, being from a Muslim background, you would never actually bow to a human being. But then when I saw Shimadaji, I was just absolutely awestruck.
Yeah.
And then Shrimati asked me where I came from and so on. And then she gave a speech. But what was fantastic about it was Shrimati gave a speech as if she was talking to millions of people in front of her. As if, and then I remember she was talking about the isms. You remember the talk that she gave?
Not specifically that day, no.
About, she was talking about all these isms like capitalism,
Isms, yeah.
all that. And then she was by explaining how all that was, just false knowledge, and that you needed to be in the center and be one with the unconscious. But she used to talk a lot about the unconscious then, much more than she did later. Huh?
Yeah.
And then she wanted to use a vocabulary which was more scientific, more sort of which people can understand more easily, as opposed to talking about using Sanskrit words and so on, and describing things in a way that people may not actually identify with. But then what was amazing also is how I knew that I was in good hands when Maureen, Pat came to work on me. Both of you, I think, worked on me. And Shivanaji came after a while, and then she said, what is this? That hand of Fatima?
Yeah. You were sat on a chair and it wasn't clearing, it wasn't moving.
Yeah,
and then
it
she
wasn't
just
moving.
said, what's that round your neck? And you got it out, didn't you?
Yeah, and I said, this is the hand of Fatima. And then you said the Kundalini shot up. But I couldn't feel it then, In fact, I felt everything afterwards.
So you were wearing a necklace. So you had some necklace.
Just like that.
Like a tabi?
Yeah, just a hand, because we asked Shrimati later, why do people worship the hand of Fatima? I said, because that was the only thing they could see, because she had the parda. And then what happened was Shrimati decided to massage my head with silvercreen. And that made a heck of a difference, because during 3 days, while I was working in college, doing experiments, I was actually doing aeronautics, and I was doing experiments with a wind tunnel, and I was feeling just coolness coming out of my head for 3 days. And then, then of course you are absolutely convinced. You got your self-realization. You know you're something completely different. You know more what you used to be, and you know that you can feel vibrations. You actually are aware of these vibrations,
So you got the realization, and Mother was massaging your head, and then you went back to college. And
I went back
for
to
3 days, you could just feel this coolness.
And for several days, I was just feeling the coolness. I think that came from that massage, But what was amazing, my colleagues thought I was a gone case. They said, we really need to save him. There's something wrong with me. Because I started telling them, can you feel the vibrations coming from these roses? We had some roses. I was doing my revisions for the final year exams. And they said, wow, he's feeling vibrations from roses. There's something wrong, And then gradually, I was looking forward to going to Gavin's place every Sunday for the program. But imagine that Shrimati used to come from Hurst Green, which was way south of, in Surrey, taking the train all the way to Victoria, then taking a taxi, coming to Gavin's place for a handful of yogis. For a handful of yogis.
Absolutely, handful, yeah.
We used to be just 9, 10 people, and then of course we had some newcomers. Gordon, I remember Gordon.
Yeah, Gordon, the dentist, yeah.
Who
Sunday afternoon, Mother would come and spend with you.
Yeah, she would do that, and sometimes she would cook food and bring food with her in a kind of tiffin box, a tiffin utensil, And it was amazing that Shrimati really, she nurtured us like children, because she
so
felt,
motherly, just like a mother would.
She was very motherly. She was so motherly, And I think we enjoyed. I'm sorry to say this to the Italians, but I'm sorry, we enjoyed the best times with Shrimati, definitely. And Maureen was even luckier than me, because obviously they were with her for at least 2-3 years before I arrived,
Yeah, 1975.
Yeah. You were there since 75, so you must have enjoyed some fabulous moments with Shrimati, and afterwards we continued, But what Maureen didn't tell you is that when we felt vibrations around our, things that we felt, whether it's false gurus or people who have actually followed up false gurus, we became experts. We could tell which false guru someone came from, we
Yeah,
were
it's
such
true.
experts. You
Yeah.
could even tell
Because you
if you
could
had
tell
a pain,
because
yeah. But if you had a pain in the Swadhisthana, for instance, depending on which part of the Swadhisthana, you knew which false guru it was, whether it was Maharishi or Muktananda or this, we were
so each of the false gurus was affecting the human beings, that was damaging their chakras in a specific way. So each false guru would
damaged
like
people.
for I remember the TMs, because the people who'd been TM were always catching on left nabi, left Vishuddhi, and I can't remember the third one. There were three things, maybe left heart, and all the
It's
TM
Agya.
people. Pardon?
Agya.
Agya, yes. And so in that same way, you're saying that each of these false gurus, they targeted specific chakras to damage them in the humans.
But
So
actually, we were in a way, can we say that we were guinea pigs of everything?
yes.
Because you see, when people came for their self-realization, there was no guarantee that we could give them self-realization. I mean, we could work on them, but sometimes it doesn't work. And the other thing which people don't realize now, because we're much stronger, is that in those days, when these new people came, we were rolling down with terrible pains, And the idea, you remember these TMs when they used to come, we were absolutely in pain, absolutely terrible pain.
Yeah.
And we used to have terrible headaches. And then gradually, it started to subside after a
After
few.
they got cleared.
Yeah, we became vaccinated, We could,
I know. At
know,
the end of
because,
the Caxton Hall meeting, you'd be finished.
yeah,
working on row after row of people who have been to awful places.
And how
But
It
all the
was
newcomers were just all the newcomers who in those days were actually coming from false gurus, TMers, Muktananda, all these other.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Mother was really, it's true, because even when I came in 79, I remember this guy somebody brought him to, I think Rustum brought this Mormon to the ashram, and he was trying to kind of convert us and convert Shri Mataji, and Mother was very gracious and just kind of let him go on. And then eventually he left, and she said, now you see where he was catching, and you see, she was like teaching us about how to handle these people who'd been to false gurus.
Yes, those were fascinating days, whatever it is. I mean, I remember I had a colleague. I remember that colleague I brought, Maureen from St. Albans. He was an Algerian fellow.
All right. Yeah.
His name was Ned. And
Ned,
he's now a very prominent. He's just retired, but he became a very prominent professor of thermodynamics in Canada, and a big researcher who was sort of became quite famous. But we couldn't give him self-realization. No way. We tried everything we could. Kundalini just wouldn't.
His chakras were just so blocked, and
No,
he just had the desire.
No, the agya was blocked. We couldn't go past the agya.
Remind us, Djamel, you were a student at this University of Hatfield. How old were you?
Hatfield. Oh, I was when I came to Sahaja, I must have been 23.
23. Okay.
Yeah. And yes, we were all around that age. I don't know, Maureen, how old were you when you came?
I was 21 when I met Mother, so I was actually 23 when you
23
came.
when yeah, that's right. So
when were you born, Jamal?
53.
53. So you're actually
53, yeah.
Oh, so you're only 6 months older than me.
Yeah, Scorpion.
It's April 54. Yeah, I know you're a Scorpion. I remember Mother saying scorpions can go 180 degrees. That's what she told me about you.
Rustum was a Scorpio ascendant, and she used to say Scorpions have a problem. They can have a problem.
Yeah,
you can have a problem.
And so when you came, Jamal, and you must have been like the first Muslim to come. Did Shri talk to you? Because I remember when Greshna came and she was from Poland, the mother went, "Oh, now we can work out the Polish because we have a yogi who's from Poland. I can clear her chakras." So I'm thinking, did she not talk to you a little bit about the Muslim religion and?
She did, yeah, she did. She spoke on different occasions on the Muslims, on how, once she's the one thing that I remember most was when she said that you can't remember. She said you cannot imagine how much we suffered during the Muslim era because.
Oh, we've lost him.
Oh, the signal dropped for him, probably.
So,
Yes.
yeah, just to continue on what I was saying earlier on,
Yes, please.
but I have to let me just say something to explain the context. The context is we were very lucky. I mean, Maureen, of course, was even luckier than me because we had Shri very close to us. I mean, we were so often with her that we spent so many hours and hours and hours with her in Ashley Gardens, in Hers Green also, but much later also, even in Brompton Square. But I remember when she was in Ashley Gardens in particular, uh, because she was renovating the flat, she used to call, we used to be in Finchley Ashram. She used to call in the morning and say, please come to my place in Victoria, where she used to live. So we used to go every morning and then run out at lunchtime when CP comes and then come back just after he's gone. We were like little rats, always around Shivaji. And I remember we used to, when she was renovating the flat, we often spent time, had lunches at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
next to the Westminster Cathedral, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I remember she was talking about Islam, and she said, you can't imagine how much we suffered during that time because we used to travel on camelbacks. And camels, they sort of go up and down. It's a very, very arduous kind of um, instrument to actually travel. And she said, you can't imagine also how violent people were in those days. If you said anything, they would just take out their sword and cut your head. It was so violent. And she said, you don't know now we've got human rights and you can sit peacefully, even, just sitting in McDonald's having, she used to like the McFish, by the way, for those who are interested.
Fillet of fish.
She would always go the McFish,
Strawberry
But,
milkshake.
but
A
she said,
milkshake and
yeah.
apple pie. Yeah.
And what she said was, you can't imagine that today we're actually able to just sit peacefully and talk to each other peacefully and have human rights and have you're in an environment which is completely different from what it was in the times of the Prophet, And then she said, when I came, she said when she came, she incarnated. Part of her Shakti was in the Prophet and the other part was in Fatima. She said I was partly in Fatima and partly in Prophet Muhammad. And she also spoke.
Fatima is Prophet Muhammad's daughter.
Yes, Fatima is the daughter, yeah. And she explained how.
So she incarnated her being. Incarnated her being.
Yeah. I'm trying to see, but what else she said, because I've written so much about it. But in any case, she spoke about how she was saying how the Prophet actually what he tried to balance the Kundalini as much as possible. So he brought Hassan and Hussein, Ali and Fatima, and they're all actually left and right. If you look at that, Fatima is more sort of Mahalakshmi or on the left Nabi. Ali is more on the right side as Brahmadeva. Hassan is, I think he's Buddha, and Hussein is Mahavira, or the other way around. In any case, she said he did a lot to balance the Kundalini, and he did a lot for the evolution of our subtle being, and she said many other things. I mean, there are so many anecdotes around.
So if I may ask, like, you'd come from a Muslim background from Algeria, you were a student in England, you felt the magic of Shri Mataji, you could feel the vibrations. So there were no questions as such. But for those viewers who are watching it from an Islamic background, maybe, is there anything that you had in conversation with Shri Mataji other than what you have told us that you think might be
Well,
able
one
to
of the things that we asked Shimanaji, why is it that the Prophet tried to forbid Muslims from worshipping idols? Because that's the first thing that happens when you come to Sahaja Yoga. Then you realize that now you have a consciousness that allows you to discriminate between what has vibration and what doesn't have vibration, what is holy and what is unholy. And in fact, the first encounter that I had, because I had to tell of my experience, the first encounter I had with idols, I could say, was when we went to Hers Green. Shimanaji invited us to her house. I remember Pat telling me, he showed me this statue of Sri Ganesha, which was later placed in Chesham Road. And he said, you can feel the vibrations. It's really cool. And I was trying to feel the vibration. At the same time, I had this, this conditioning in me that says, yes, you're not supposed to be putting your hands towards an idol or something. But gradually, and because Pat and Maureen and Douglas they were very, very sweet. So they managed to inculcate into me that reality, which I didn't have. And then gradually you realize that, then we did ask actually Shimataji, why is it that the Prophet, he asked Muslims not to worship any idols and so on. And she said, one of the reasons, she said, is that Hindus went too far into idol worship. So he's trying to actually create a bit of a balance by saying, forget about idols, just worship the formless. And that's why. But when you're inside yoga, it's a different situation because, as I said, if a Muslim listens to us, he will ask questions. How can we talk about idols? But then we have to think that there are idols that have good vibrations. You can actually feel their vibrations, but you're not necessarily worshiping them. You're just feeling their vibrations. It's different. There's a difference between worshiping and you're not worshiping the idol. You're worshiping the vibrations that may be sitting in that idol. And you can actually feel it. You have that discriminating power, which you didn't have before, which you don't have if you're just a Muslim and you have no real self-realization.
which is possible because of self-realization.
Yeah. It's only possible because you have that collective consciousness.
And the
Otherwise,
vibrations are coming from the divine. So what you're feeling, like in that statue of Sri Ganesha, is you're feeling the divine in that statue because it has maybe, Mother gave it. It has these vibrations like the Swayambhus,
Exactly. Yeah. So, but still, I mean,
But
good thing
your
about
question,
Sadhguru, it tells you something very important that, all these holy places that people go and spend so much money to go and visit and so on, whether it is Kashi or Mecca and so on, you realize after a while that you've got them inside yourself, you don't need, because humanity is inside. So, and especially now that she's no more on earth, But even in those days, if you needed to go to Hajj or to Mecca, it was best to go to a puja, and you had a billion times more vibrations than you could ever get in Mecca. And
because the times have changed, because Muhammad came at that time for a specific purpose, to establish the Dharma and the balance for
exactly. And then people,
but then now Shri came, and to prepare the way for Mother's incarnation too. He came, Muhammad, to prepare the way so that we would have balance in our beings, so that we could receive the self-realization and recognize and understand what the divine was giving us through Mother.
Okay, going back to you as a student, Jamel, and in a house share. How did your life change besides the, of course, that subtle awareness and that absolute magic where Shri Mataji massaged your head with silver crane and for days after that you were in bliss? How did your day-to-day life pan out, and what happened? Are there any miracles that
Yeah, that is a miracle. The very first miracle, the most important miracle is that before I came to Sahaja Yoga, I used to feel I had some psychosomatic problems, I remember, which were some left-sided things that I must have caught when I was in Algeria, because my mom, in her goodness, she thought it's not a bad idea to go and see a sorcerer, because you know these sorcerers, they exist everywhere. Algeria also has its lot of people who do
What, like witchcraft? You mean like witchcraft?
people witchcraft. They do some kind of witchcraft. And I remember she was taking me to this lady who was working with some kind of witchcraft. I don't know what she was doing. She was. I remember it. I was a kid. I was only what, 5 years old or something. And I think I must have caught something there. You know, some kind of. And I know that by the age of 15 or 16, I started feeling these very bad left side problems. You know, the psychosomatic things. You know, pains and so on. But the doctors never found anything, you know. I remember going to a special medical check for pilots, because I was almost going to be doing flying, you know, and learning to fly with an airline. They were actually, you know, looking for people to go and be pilots and train as pilots. And I remember the doctors never saw any problems. I was actually qualified to become a pilot. And yet inside I knew I was not all right. There was a problem. And Shri Mataji, much later, she said, you know, I saved you from all those problems, you know. I sorted it out, you know. And I remember she used to, she worked so much on us. Sometimes she said, I had to go so much into your left side. And some of these boots, they just hide so far into the left side, you know.
So in the witchcraft, so through this witchcraft,
yeah. And you get
these
this
negative entities
yeah.
had been absorbed into your body without you realizing it.
But Shri Mataji really worked on us, and she really saved us. She sorted out all that, and you can feel the difference. It's a massive difference between what you feel before and after. Massive difference. And I think perhaps the divine has its tricks so that it can show you how much it has improved your life, so that you know you realize how important Sahaja Yoga is. You see.
Yes.
But I think we were very lucky. We were lucky in a sense, because we could have been like many of those who had come in the 70s. I mean, in the late 70s, for instance, those who came to Caxton Hall, many of them didn't say Sahaja Yoga, they just left. Many of them, of course, came from false gurus and couldn't actually. They were not able to accept Sahaja Yoga fully. So, but we were so lucky.
Very fortunate.
You know.
Yes. Yes, because it's lifetimes of punyas that Shri Mataji has kept us as her children for so long, and hopefully forever. I remember once Maureen was sharing in the early interviews how Shri Mataji had pinned your kundalini up for months.
Because she said it was like this. Needed pinning up. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. For the first 6 months she pinned it up, and I was just completely there and just protected, absolutely protected, because the environment I was in was so dangerous. It was hippies, it was drug addicts, heroin addicts, and we were squatting, and we'd go from that to mother and back again, you know. And it's absolute. I mean, she saved my life, you know. I was days off going into the deepest pit ever, you know.
I came to Dolmus Square, you know. You remember?
Yeah.
In fact, I went to. I think I went to Douglas's room, and he made.
Dougie had a council flat, but it was still crazy.
No, he was there, and he made some tea for me. I remember in Dolmus Square.
Yeah.
Must have had a council flat afterwards, no? Just after.
Well, I think it was some sort of, it wasn't a squat that he was in. It was actually a sort of, but he had the whole place rigged for music and everything. Do you remember?
Yeah.
He's such a clever man.
I remember his alarm clock system. I stayed there one night, and in the morning he had this like it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. The lights would start flashing and there was music, and so wake up call for meditation, early meditation was really something.
Early in the morning in England, isn't it? With all the darkness most of the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, because it was so dark. It was really hard to get up early in those days. It was really heavy.
Yeah.
But that was something Mother.
Actually, sleep was our national favorite sport in those days.
It was eating and sleeping, eating, because we'd given up every other vice.
Yeah. Eating and
Mataji
drinking
could cook
tea.
for you, so that's
Sorry,
Mataji would cook for you. Could you really?
she cooked.
Yeah.
She cooked
Cooked,
at her
yeah.
screen. I remember her cooking at her screen for us. Yes,
But she used
because
to bring food to Gavin's as well. No?
yeah, and she'd always buy the sweets from Ambala for the puja, and
Yes.
we just have one piece of Ambala as a prasad. I always think that when we have armfuls of prasad, you only need one piece.
Yeah.
One piece. And we each puja would take you to a sort of level whereby the food and the prasad was completely, it was like being in paradise and you didn't need it. And then afterwards you'd come down afterwards and be on your own thinking, oh, that was so amazing, and I didn't have it because I didn't want it at the time. You literally went to a place where you didn't need to eat, you didn't need to do anything.
That's right, that's true. And the vibrations are really strong. You don't feel hungry. You don't feel hungry. You're just completely satisfied.
And mother would stay over at Gavin's as well sometimes, so we'd all sleep on the floor around the sofa.
Yeah.
And she was giving a talk once, one that Dougie recorded it, and it's on the Vishudi, and it's not a video, it's an audio. And she started it something like about 11 o'clock at night, and we were just like this, just sort of falling off. And then by midnight, we were absolutely clear as a bell, and absolutely cleared out. It was incredible.
But the best story was the one of the Mahjong game. You remember that one?
Which one?
We were playing
Mahjong.
a Chinese game called Mahjong with Pat.
Yes.
And Maureen. And Shri, when she came, it was on Sunday, of course, for the program. And when she arrived, she said, God, you're all
Caught up.
Chinese boots, And then she worked on us virtually for 24 hours, nonstop.
Yeah.
And you were caught up from playing the game.
Sleeping
Mahjong.
holding hands all night. It was so when I see Mahjong, I steer clear of it.
You steer clear.
And why do you think that was? What was it about it?
Well, in Hong Kong, they bet with it, and it's used as it's like the men play it. They play it very fast. It's a betting thing.
It's a gambling thing.
It's a gambling thing. So I mean, we played it as children innocently without gambling. So it's just because my grandmother played it because we were in Hong Kong. But obviously, it brought with it some other things.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, it was a bit loaded, as they say,
Yeah.
I mean, but that happened. I mean, that did happen quite a bit in the early days. You would just do things, or you go somewhere innocently, not knowing, and come back, and mother would say, like, where have you been? What have you been doing? Because you've got all caught up now, I remember when she came back from India one time, it must have been she must have gone in the end of 79, 80. And one of the yogis, she said to him, what has happened? Your whole Agya's gone. And he said, oh, I was just thinking, mother. She said, because she'd been gone for like 2 months or something like that. And she goes, no.
Wow.
But that
did there was this story where the cooking was going on in the kitchen, and then
yes. So
would you like to share?
this is at Djamels. Was this a different house?
This is a different place.
Hatfield.
Yes, it was in Hatfield.
Yes. I think so. I can't
Give us the time.
give us the background, Djamel, because I can't quite remember the details.
If you possibly can, the date year.
Yeah, the way it happened was I had finished my bachelor's and I came back to Hatfield to do an MPhil research with the possibility of doing a PhD, finishing a PhD and all that. And what happened was
engineering you were doing?
I was doing research in aerodynamics, yeah.
Aerodynamics. Okay.
And then what I did, we actually managed to get a house with some other colleagues of the university. In Hatfield, in a place in very close to Hatfield, but in the country. You know, it was secluded place, and the actually the owner who lived there was quite a nice man, and he had built this house next to his own house, and it was a very beautiful house, very big. It had a large kitchen, it had some beautiful rooms and so on. And one day Shumanji wanted to do some programs in I
I
think
think
she
she
was
went to Cambridge as well.
Cambridge. Yeah, she was going to Cambridge, and then I said, okay, then in that case, you can stop at my place. So she came with other yogis. It was Tony, Rustum, yourself.
There was about, I think there
the-
was about like 10.
yeah, we were about 10 people, and
Well, probably because they lived in Cambridge.
no, because those they came from London, and they were accompanying Shumanji to go to Cambridge, and.
We got a little mini tour around that
Yeah,
area.
so they stopped in at my place, and Shimadi slept in my room. You remember? She had a program. We had a small program in my. I brought a few colleagues, and she gave them realization, and then that was on the way to Cambridge, not on the way back. On the way to Cambridge, and then a few days later, maybe 2 days later, on the way back, she stopped also at Hatfield in a place called Applecross. And I remember that it was an unexpected stop, which made it slightly tricky for us because we didn't have all the food we needed. We hadn't prepared anything. And then at some point said, we're going to try and we went to the kitchen. We tried to find a way of cooking something with the few ingredients we had.
Oh, I didn't. So
After
see, I didn't hear any of that. So I was still in the room, in the living room with Mataji, and Bala was there. Bala was there. Bala was
yeah,
with us. Yeah.
he was with us. And
Yeah.
uh,
And we were just sitting around Mataji, and she was just chatting. I can't remember what she was saying. And then just suddenly she said, "Oh, they're taking a long time. Why are they taking a long time?" And now you're explaining
yeah,
why
that's right.
they're
So
taking
we
a long time.
were at a loss. We didn't know what to do because it was already night time. It was
Yeah.
8 o'clock in the evening. We just we came back in a big thunderstorm. You remember? It was a huge thunderstorm.
Yes.
And then Shimadiji came to the kitchen. He said, "Okay, show me what you have." So we
Yeah,
showed.
no. So we were sitting, she's sitting there,
Yeah,
and she suddenly said, "Oh, they're taking so long. Let's go see what they're doing." And
yeah.
she
So she
jumped
came
up,
to the kitchen.
literally kind of like leapt up, went into the kitchen and took over.
And she made this special dish with rice and yogurt, and then we all sat around the table. And
That was what
then,
I remembered. That's what I remember because as we sat down around the table, and it was like an old farmhouse kitchen with a very
yeah,
long
that's right.
table.
With a very long table, yeah.
Yeah, and mother sat at one end, and I suddenly was overcome with this sensation of like, I felt like this historical depth of vibration, and I felt like, oh, this must have been what it was like when they had their Last Supper, you know? I mean, it
Yeah,
wasn't, but it had that, somehow it had that, carried that vibration. I don't know, it was a very deep experience for me.
Was that sweet or savory, if I may ask? The yogurt and rice dish.
Savory.
It was just savory, yeah. It was not.
It was a dinner dish. It was a supper dinner dish.
Studies. Yeah. Okay.
But
Okay.
what's amazing is before the end of the dinner, someone asked Shimaji, "What is hell?"
Oh.
I wanted to ask, "What is hell?" And Shimaji said, "I can't tell you now, but once we finish the dinner, I'll let you know." And then once we finished, she said, "Actually, hell is the excrement system of God."
Oh.
And that's
The
why
dregs, like the dregs.
the excrement system of God, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
The
it's
discards,
not very good to be in hell. That's
no.
definitely not a good idea. So and that was I think it was quite fantastic. I remember the next day, Shimataji slept in the room, my room, of course, which was a very big room actually, and we decided, we asked mother if we could sleep around. I said, well, you know what people will say and so on, and then she said, okay, you just sleep here. We had a nice wall-to-wall carpet, which was virtually brand new, so we all slept around there, and
On
then
the floor, on the floor.
on the floor. And then the next morning, I remember Tony, he cut her nails. You remember? She
He
was,
really liked to
Fantastic.
do that, didn't he?
he liked to do it.
Because he understood
Yeah,
the deep
important.
spiritual significance of
Yeah,
the nails of the. He really understood Mother as a Devi, as the goddess.
So, but
yeah.
what's the significance of cutting her nails, please?
Well, what he used to do, he used to take the nails. I think he used to bury them somewhere. I don't know. People are not. I don't know why. Some people. I don't know what people do with the nails of Shumanaji. Usually, you give them back to Shumanaji, but he used to take them and.
In those days, I don't think they understood that protocol.
Yeah,
Later on, we
exactly. Yeah.
understood that because after Shimataji would stay, later on, when Mother was staying in a hotel, when she would go to a city or a place, the ladies would go in after Mother's visit and carefully find any hairs on the bedding and save them and then give them back to her. But in the early years, we didn't understand that protocol. But I do remember Tony being very careful about the fingernails and also Mother's hair, because he was aware that each one carried so much vibrations. And I know that there were quite a few things were buried in the garden at Chelsham Road.
Yeah. So the other thing that happened then, I don't know if you remember, Felicity, but the next day in the morning, Shimanaji, she was just leaving the house, and then she said, "Okay, can you bury this coconut?" Because we had a coconut that she vibrated. She said, "Can you bury it next to the entrance, the entrance door?" You remember? Well, as I came out, well, I started burying this coconut, and the owner, I mean the landlord, was walking past, and he came to see us, and he said, "Oh, that won't grow here," he said. And we explained actually that this is more something that will have good vibrations, will clear out the place and so on. And then she managed actually, she shook his hand, and I said that he had a stroke, and she said, yes, as I knew. So she stroked. I think it will certainly improve him now that I shook his hand. And then when she went into the car, she said, why don't you consider me to be also Prophet Muhammad? You remember that? And then
Well, what I remember
she
is
said,
yes, she sat in the car
yeah,
and
she
she
sat in
turned to
the car.
you with the window down,
Yeah,
and she suddenly, it's like she pulled her
yeah. She
hair,
said, I can
her
have a
long hair.
beard as well. And she put her hair around her,
Yeah, and I remember her
cheeks.
turning
Yeah,
to you and saying, "Is
yeah.
that better now?"
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was because she said, she said, I can have a beard as well. So you go, I can put my hair around
So,
my
do you
cheek.
think that was so that you
Yeah.
made that deeper recognition and connection, coming from your Muslim background somehow? Because
With this story, I'm afraid we've jumped to 2 years later, literally. So we need to we need to also have a session, Sushmita, where we can speak about first ashram. Hello, this is whose daughter is she?
This is Mercy's daughter.
Oh,
hello,
hello.
Mercy.
Young,
This is
beautiful.
Snow. She's called Snow.
Oh,
She just comes.
hello, Snow. How are you?
Say hello.
Ah.
Sweet. Hello. Anyway, so we jumped, Maureen, I think we jumped to 2 years, 79.
Yeah.
So we need to, Shushmita, we need to really talk about this intermediate
Yes,
period between
go back.
between
Go back, yeah.
Gavins and all the way to of course,
Yes,
Hatfield
please
and
do.
Upper and all that.
Please do. I wanted to ask if Shamathji mentioned something about the cathedral in St. Albans, because we remember reading about in the recollection stories that you had contributed. So would you like to take us through those intervening 2 years, please?
What I can remember from the story of the cathedral, and I think Maureen came with us as well. You
Yeah.
were there. I think Mataji wanted to visit. She wanted to
Yeah.
go and
Yeah.
pay respect to St. Albans. So we went to the cathedral, which was very close. We went on foot. It was just so close. And she bowed she knelt in front of the St. Albans, the tomb of St. Albans. And then it was quite amazing to see that, because it's not often that you see Mataji actually kneeling down, And then she spoke about very highly of St. Albans, And there is another anecdote, which maybe not many people know, is that when you go from St. Albans to London, the train takes you to St. Pancras, and St. Pancras was also a Roman. He was also in Rome. He was executed or beheaded or something by the Romans also for his Christian beliefs. And it's amazing that there's connection between St. Albans and St. Pancras. And he was only 14 years old, St. Pancras.
Wow.
And so that I can. But then after that, of course, we had many other stories. I mean, the fact that Mataji arranged for the very first ashram to open. It was in Acton Lane. We must have stayed there just 2 months, and then we moved.
About that.
And we were 5 or 6 yogis, as Pat, myself, Maureen,
Christine,
Gus.
I think that was it.
That was it. Yeah, just we were
Yeah.
fine. But it was a small flat, but it had amazing vibrations. Amazing vibrations. Yeah. And whenever someone came into the house, you could feel him coming.
Yeah.
If you remember that, if someone was close to the house, to the flat, or they were just about to arrive through the door, you could actually feel their vibrations.
Yeah.
We used to be we used to meditate religiously every morning, very early, with all the mantras. I remember we used to sing all the mantras. And then we went to Finchley after that. I think I went to Australia for a couple of months, 2-3 months, and then came back. And in Finchley, I found Gregoire had joined us.
Yeah.
And we had David Baxter. Gus had left. He went back to Australia.
And Lindsay was there. Do you remember Lindsay?
Yeah, Lindsay was there as well from Australia.
Mm.
And who else? Pat, of course, was there.
Yeah.
You were there as well. Yeah.
And Christine
Marie,
still.
had Marie come then? Not yet.
No,
Marie
came in the beginning. Marie bought me.
But she was living in France. She used to come.
Yes, she lived in France. Yeah.
Marie, she came. She must have come in 75? Huh?
Well, she came before me with Gus in 75. Yes, a few months before. And then she brought me. But then she got stuck in France for 2 years because of her hippie past. They wouldn't let her back into England. She kept trying to come.
She had a drug conviction or something like that.
Something. It wasn't hugely whatever, but she couldn't get back. And it drove her crazy because obviously mother was here. But she was there in the early part, but she wasn't in the ashrams.
Yeah, no, she wasn't. I remember.
But she did come to India the first time we went in 77 from France. Ironically, she managed to get into India, but not England.
I know. Yeah, she had a few issues. So that was we had Acton Lane, then we had Finchley from about October, and we had Finchley probably until September 1978.
Yes. Okay.
Well, no, in 78. I started uni, and we hadn't been in Finchley very long at that time.
So you left. You must have. Yeah, but you were in Finchley during the first few months.
No, I'm saying that we still had Finchley because I was going to uni from Finchley.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it was a huge journey from Finchley all the way to East London every day and back. And then eventually I moved to East London.
Yeah. The same with me. I left Finchley. I left Finchley probably in June 79, and I went to
No,
No,
78.
no, sorry,
He was
78.
No,
78.
78 was, he
And
was still there.
then I went to Hatfield, yeah. But but the most, I think the most striking thing about 78 was the fact that every morning Shri would call the ashram, and then she would
Yeah.
ask me and me and Gregoire. I had a grant to go to university, but I hadn't started my course yet, so I was free. And Gregoire and myself, we used to go to Ashley every morning, and Shri would correct Gregoire's.
Yeah, he was writing the Advent and I
Uh,
was typing.
She
Yeah,
was virtually crossing everything.
everything, absolutely everything. Yeah,
Everything.
every day.
Every day. But sometimes when he wasn't around, she said, I'm crossing all this for his ego, you know. It was so funny. But and those were the times when we spent a lot of time with Shimaji. I mean, in Ashley Garden,
Yeah.
she worked on us for hours on end, you know.
So when she called you in the morning, what would she say?
She would say, come
along.
like that, you know. That's all. She
Come
would
over.
just say, can you come now? And we would go, yeah.
So you'd spend the whole day there.
Yeah, we would spend the whole day there, yeah.
So you would have your tea or chai, snacks, and lunch.
Yes. We would probably have some time. It depends when they actually moved officially into Ashley, because at the beginning it was just renovation. But when they actually moved into Ashley, we used to sort of leave at lunchtime when CP was coming. And after a while, Shimaji, of course, explained to us that CP wanted to have a bit of privacy. So it was important for us not to disturb them during weekends. And we gave some time, you know, it's amazing how much we put CP through so much. And Shimaji also had this knack of getting even Sahaja Yogis to come during weekends, because she would have the excuse of saying, okay, let's move some furniture around. So we would all come and move furniture. And then, you know, and I remember once I saw CP and he was going past, and I said, CP, you don't do anything. He said, no, I don't. I'm a witness. I'm the witness. And Shimedi said, don't believe him.
Don't believe him.
Don't believe him. That was amazing. Yeah, those were times when Shimaji also invited a lot of people who were friends of CP, or who were people. I mean, I remember she even gave realization to the High Court judge who was at La Haye in Holland, and this guy came. She gave him realization. He even did a foot soak and all that. She gave realization to so many people, and worked with so many people. So many people who were sick, you know. I mean, I remember one person that Shmetaji was busy going to a reception, and he said, there's a lady, an Indian lady in the Royal Hospital. You remember that's where Douglas, I think, worked, huh? The Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead. She said, can you go and work on her? She's in a coma. And we went with another yogi. I can't remember who went with me. And we took some lemons and we worked on her for quite a while. Then we left the lemons next to her head. And before we finished, she opened her eyes. She came out of her coma. And then Shimadaji went the next day and finished the job. And that lady she invited us to a party, dinner party, to thank Shimadaji. And she was hopping around. She said, you should have been there. I wasn't there, actually. She said, you should have been there. You worked on her. And it was amazing to see how we didn't necessarily realize how powerful we were, but we worked on these people and they just resuscitated, you know, even though they were in a coma. This lady was in a coma. And there were many other people that Shimadaji worked on in Ashley Gardens. Mrs. Mera, you remember Mrs. Mera?
Mrs. Mary, yeah.
She was an Indian lady. She had cancer, and Shimadaji used to work on her. She would come every day. She would work on her for an hour or so, you know. But she still passed away because I don't know. She didn't have that reverence, you know. And I remember one guy and one family of Syrians. You know, you were not there, but Rustam was there, and they brought this boy who had kidney failure. I mean, he was on dialysis and so on. And we worked on him for at least a couple of hours with Shimadaji, and we said all the bija mantras. We did everything that was possible, but unfortunately, we didn't manage to sort him out. We didn't manage to cure him. And at the end, I remember Rustam saying, "Well, I'm afraid Shimadaji, he didn't have the. It's true, he didn't have the reverence towards Shimadaji for him to receive, the blessings and all that. It didn't."
Yeah, because if he didn't have that recognition, people who didn't have that recognition or that understanding of mother, they don't open themselves. So then she can't.
He doesn't. He didn't need to recognize Shimadaji, but at least he should have. The boy should have had some reverence. He was. I mean,
Gratitude.
he was what, 19 or 20 years old, and so he was grown up. He was fairly grown up, so he could understand. He could actually realize and judge who Shimadaji was and how much he was working on him, and he didn't, and it just didn't work out. So it's just like giving self-realization. Now, not everybody could get it. Huh?
I remember an incident in the last 10 years or so, my mum telling, I come from Lucknow, where we have a confluence of the Hindu-Muslim culture. And in the Lucknow collectivity, in the main center, which is at Gomti Nagar, she told how a Muslim family came with a child, bed-bound child, like lying down, to the center. And this is in the last 10 years. And they had this faith, this absolute rock solid faith that Shri Mataji would cure the child. And a few visits later, they came with that child actually walking and meditating. So, I mean, this is after so many years, that recognition is, and the faith is such a thing. So yes, please share.
It's good to know that you are from Lucknow, because we went to Lucknow in 1998, I think.
Yes.
With there was we were with what's his name, Yogi, who organized everything, and there was a big conference on Sahaja Yoga. Actually, it was for the Muslims.
Yes, yes, it was. We saw it on the video with Shankarji and I. We were watching that Lucknow visit because he also went, I think on the 98 tour, possibly, not tour. It was after the birthday puja that Shrimati, some of the Western yogis went to Lucknow to talk about the connection, well, talking to the Muslim people.
Sahaja Yoga, yes, that's right. Yeah.
And realization, yes.
Yeah.
And so CP's family were from Lucknow.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's exactly. Yes, they're from Lucknow, yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of miracles in those early years of mother curing. I can't remember the details, but I remember her talking about being somewhere and curing this young boy with his arm. It was like it was somehow severed and the skin grew back and joined. And, we every so often mother would, we'd hear this story. Oh, Shmataji was giving that program, or she was in India, or she was here. And Rustam was often recounting. I didn't see them myself, but there was a lot of curing going on.
So Sushmita, do you want to continue, or shall we have another session?
Should we have another session?
I have one question. I have one quick question. I remembered you were telling us, Djamel, how you studied aerodynamics, and I can't remember if you were with us, but I remember saying to you, we went to Sherborne Abbey with Shrimataji, and she looked up at the buttresses and the ceiling, and she explained to us. She said, so we were standing there. I had a guidebook. We're looking up at the ceiling at these huge stone buttresses in the roof of the ceiling, and she casually says, looking up, I wonder how they made those. And I thought, mother wants to know how they made those. So I start flipping through the guidebook looking to see, because they would probably explain. And within a very short time, she went, oh, well, actually, and then she explained the whole thing to us. And I remember thinking, of course, Mother knows everything. She's the source of all knowledge. And I think I related this story to you, and you said, yes. And then you talked about how you'd had all these conversations with her about aerodynamics.
Yes, yes,
Can,
yes.
can you talk about that a bit?
She knows a lot of things, yeah. Because we were talking about the effects of airflow. And you have, when you have airflow along the airfoil of a plane, you have what we call a laminar layer, which sticks to the plane, and then you have a turbulent layer, which starts, which becomes very, in a way, arbitrary, but you have to have statistics to actually predict the speed of air around the wing, because the air is not laminar anymore. It's just, we call it turbulent because it goes into rolls and it starts to almost disintegrate, on the wing. And Shivaji said, "Oh, that's where the vibrations actually control. That air is actually controlled by vibrations," she was saying. And she was explaining a lot of things about the airworthiness and so on, and how plane drive. And she was explaining how Shri Hanuman is the one who helps the aeronautical industry, and helps planes fly and so on, and keeps up, So she said, if you're scared, because one day she looked at me, she said, "Why are you scared of flying?" And I failed to tell her that it was because I knew too much about how they were built, and how they were maintained, and that really scares you a bit. And
You know what could go wrong.
she said, "Why are you scared?" She said. And then from then on, that fear just left, completely.
Did she ever, did she ever talk to you about, because she mentioned that in Sri Rama's time, they had flying machines, they had things that flew. Did she ever mention that?
No, we didn't talk about the pushback and all that. We never talked about those vehicles, no. I think she talked to other Sahaja Yogis about it, and she said that in those days, they used a kind of energy that later on humans abused it and they lost it. It will probably come back one day, and we may be able to use that kind of a different kind of energy. But apparently, she said one thing which I didn't hear her directly, but someone said to me, that she said that the way we propel airplanes is a very primitive way, because in fact it's a bit like taking two boilers, in the sky, and heating up the air and getting it to thrust through these jet engines. And she doesn't feel that somehow the way we propel our planes today is so sophisticated. She feels that it's really backward, very backward, which is understandable, because when you think of how much it is polluted and how much, all the fumes that you're getting from one engine, you can imagine how backward we are in that respect.
Interesting. That is.
Sushmita, let me know if you want, we can maybe schedule another whatever.
Yes, and have Pat join you.
Yes.
Join, yeah, exactly.
First, before you sign off, thank you so much for today's session, Maureen, Felicity. Well, thank you for your time.
And it was very good. Thank you for organizing this, Sushmita. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Felicity as well. Just wait. Thank you, Shri Mataji, for everything. And yes, we must have a part 2, and we will be in touch about that. Thank you once again.
Okay.